Here's something that might surprise you. Studies show that in major cities, up to 20% of men have paid for sex at some point in their lives. Yet it remains one of society's most taboo topics. Today we're exploring the complex psychology and neuroscience behind why men seek out prostitutes.
That statistic really challenges our assumptions about how common this behaviour actually is. What's fascinating is how it persists across all cultures and time periods.
Well, let's start with something counterintuitive. Research shows it's not primarily about physical pleasure. The evolutionary and neurological drivers are far more complex than most people realize.
So, what does the science tell us about these deeper motivations?
Recent studies in evolutionary psychology have shown that men's brains are still running on what you might call ancient software, programming that encourage seeking multiple partners to ensure genetic diversity. The fascinating part is how this manifests in modern society.
But that doesn't fully explain why men would pay for sex rather than seek multiple partners through dating or other means.
That's where the neuroscience comes in. When a man pays for sex, his brain experiences a unique cocktail of neurochemicals. Dopamine from the anticipation, adrenaline from the risk, and interestingly, oxytocin during the encounter itself. Brain imaging studies show activation patterns similar to other addictive behaviors.
That's really interesting how the commercial aspect actually changes the neurological response compared to other sexual encounters.
And here's something even more surprising. Research has found that high achieving executives and professionals are statistically more likely to seek out prostitutes than other demographic groups. It's often linked to stress relief and a desire for control in lives that feel increasingly chaotic.
That really challenges the common stereotypes about who engages in this behaviour.
The psychological factors are particularly fascinating. Studies have identified four main motivators: lack of emotional connection, power dynamics, need for validation, and escapism from stress. What's interesting is how these often overlap and reinforce each other.
The social context seems crucial too. How does our increasingly digital world play into this?
Well, recent data shows a direct correlation between increased social media use and rates of prostitution. The more connected we become virtually, the more disconnected we become physically and emotionally. Some researchers call it the intimacy paradox.
That makes me think about how technology might be amplifying these ancient behavioural patterns rather than helping us evolve beyond them.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Brain imaging studies show that frequent use of commercial sex actually changes neural pathways over time, making it harder to form genuine emotional connections. It's creating what researchers call intimacy anhedonia.
So in trying to fulfill a need for connection, they might actually be making it harder to connect.
Precisely. And this brings us to what some researchers call the energy deficit. While the physical need might be met, there's an emotional and spiritual cost that accumulates over time. Recent studies show increased rates of depression and anxiety among regular users.
That really highlights how complex human sexuality and emotional needs are. It's not just about physical gratification.
And here's something that ties it all together. Research from multiple countries shows that societies with stronger social bonds and better emotional education have significantly lower rates of prostitution. It suggests that addressing the underlying emotional needs might be more effective than focusing on the behavior itself.
That really brings us full circle to the fundamental human need for connection.
Looking ahead, researchers are suggesting a more holistic approach to addressing these issues, combining better emotional education for men, more open discussion about healthy sexuality, and creating more opportunities for genuine connection in our increasingly isolated society.
So it's really about understanding and addressing the root causes rather than just the symptoms.
Exactly. And perhaps that's the most important insight from all this research. Behind this ancient profession lies a very human need for connection that we're still struggling to address in healthy ways in our modern world.